When that 1964 Civil Rights Bill passed, those Dixiecrats who are now Republicans, those people never stopped fighting. I think we're talking about 60 plus years of them preparing. Yes, the Project 2025 maybe came around the late 1970s, early 1980s, but when that Civil Rights Bill passed, they never stopped fighting. We thought maybe or felt that we have overcome and all of that and kumbaya.
Greetings, Scouts. Hello, and welcome to the Local Lookout. We have a great show planned for you today. Rodney, how you doing, brother?
Bobby, I am doing great, man. I am keeping my head above water. But otherwise, man, just it's election week, so we're going to see how we're going to watch these numbers as the week goes on, how they're looking for these local elections. I think people are not looking at Georgia so much because Georgia has there's no big time people on the ballot. But however, that PSC, I think, is the statewide, election that we have for this election. I think it's going to reflect how people are feeling about those so-called kitchen table issues, because I think your electric bill is a kitchen table issue. Right. So I'm looking at it this way, Bobby. If people in Georgia say, well, we didn't have a senator, we didn't have a certain Congress people on the ballot, so therefore I didn't show up, then that tells me that you're not that worried about these so-called kitchen table issues. And so we shall see. So, as a matter of fact, I think Georgia be a good bellwether for kitchen table issues because of the PSC. And I know people will say, well, people don't know what the PSC is and stuff like
Public
that.
Service
But
Commission.
Yeah, exactly, the Public Service Commission. But if you're worried about your kitchen table issues, then I think Public Service Commission has been said enough times over the last 9 months for you to be concerned about it. But yeah, so Bobby, that's where I'm at.
Well, I would hope that these are the type of things that people start paying attention to in your local elections. Like we've said numerous times, why local politics is so important. If the cost of your power bill is no big deal to you and you don't vote, hey, more power to you. But in this day and age where the economy is a big issue amongst most Americans, and based on where you live, if you don't pay attention and cast your vote on issues like this, you're an unserious voter. And we've had a lot of unserious voters that have cast their ballots that are complaining about certain things, but then you don't pay attention to the real issues that affect you and where your vote should be going. So, hey, again, we wait till general election time to start talking about what's important. And I'm voting based on this and that. But then when prior to getting to the general election, we have these type of issues that are on the ballot and you can cast your vote and let your voice be heard. We get people that aren't interested, aren't paying attention. And as you said, if you don't know anything about your public service commissioner by now, you just really haven't been paying attention at all. So don't complain. All right. If your power bill suddenly doubles or you're looking around and you're saying, wait a minute, why did the cost per therm go up? What is going on here? Well, these are the issues right here. So that's one thing about these type of shows that we're trying to do here, and what we're trying to educate people on is pay attention to these things, man. Take your vote serious, because some people don't take it serious until general election time. And then you wind up opening your mouth and talking about things that you really don't know what you're talking about because you ain't been paying attention in between the 4 years after the general election has happened. So, I just want to make sure I put that out there.
Yes, sir. And, we talk about so much on here, Bobby. We repeat the mantra over and over again on this platform that all politics is local. We say it so much on this platform. So you better pay attention. So, but anyway, it's great, Bobby, because the good thing is the election is over. And so with you talking about our hot topic tonight, but you're going to take us back a little bit on some of your thoughts about the 2024 election. Bobby, take it away, sir, our hot topic.
I appreciate that. Well, I'm going to go back down memory lane a little bit, and let's go back to the 2024 election and just a theory and some things that I have surmised between a year ago. When you go back and look at it, it was a year ago now that we cast our ballot for the next president of the United States. And We got a clown. We have someone in the Oval Office that doesn't respect the position at all in terms of what you're supposed to do for all Americans. It's supposed to be listening to all Americans instead of just your party or just those that support you. So I have a theory. I have something that I cannot prove, right? But I believe at this point, based on what I've seen about the 2024 election. And there's several things, several contributing factors of why I believe what I believe. And I'll briefly go over it and see what you think, Rodney, and give you your opinion as well. But I believe the 2024 election was a total sham. And I bring this up because, you don't want to sound like the current occupant of the Oval Office who claimed over numerous times and is still doing it to this day that somehow the 2020 election was stolen. Okay. That nonsense was presented in court over 60 times, and he put up a big fat 0 in terms of any judge that looked at the case, looked at any evidence, asked the lawyers to present their findings. Not a single one agreed or found any evidence that the 2020 election was stolen. So here we are in 2025, and I'm going back and looking at the 2024 election, and I'm saying I think it was a sham. I think Kamala Harris was cheated out of a victory. And here's why I've come to this conclusion. Some stuff is simple, all right? And I've seen enough up to this point to make me say, to make me say what I'm saying here now. In 2024, we had 7 battleground states that we focused on: Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Wisconsin. Those are the 7, right? If I've got that correctly. I'm going to repeat that again. I'm going to look at my paper. Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Okay.
Yep.
I noticed something that not saying that it can't happen, obviously, but I noticed in every one of those states, looking back at the 2020 election, Donald Trump's numbers jumped in every single one of those. And yes, there was some underperformance by Kamala Harris, according to the vote, based on the poll number, based on the results. Again, I can't prove what I'm saying. I'm giving you something in theory, right? Because what I do know is that this administration is not going to go in depth into finding out whether or not the election was a sham or not. Let's think about this for a second. On the world stage, who has Trump closely associated himself with? As I would just say, is his buddies, his pals, right? We're talking about Vladimir Putin. We're talking about Maduro from Venezuela,
Yep.
Bibi Netanyahu,
Yep.
Kim Jong-un. All right. When you look at those particular individuals, they've all at some point, they're all basically considered in the position of power that they're in under elections that people believe that the vote didn't really express how the people felt, right? They've all been questioned about their legitimacy. You're not going to have an overturning of the vote for someone like a Kim Jong-un, right? You're not going to have it for someone like Vladimir Putin. And these individuals that he's grown the closest to, I just think he found a way to figure out from all of them, like, what did you do? How are you getting away with doing what you're doing to stay in power, right? Because his key thing is he wants to stay in power, right? Other thing. So you look at who he's associated himself with. I'd be stupid to think that he hasn't somehow tried to adopt whatever they did to be in office as long as they have and say, I'm going to do the same thing here. Look at who he's aligned himself with, those individuals, right? When you point in particular to Netanyahu, he's deeply unpopular in his country. He's deeply unpopular. And people didn't pay attention to last year before we got to the point of general elections. Around the summer of last year, Chuck Schumer asked that Israel have another election. He demanded that the people of Israel should have another election. When I say that, to have a real election for who their leader is because of his uncertainty about Benjamin Netanyahu. And of course they didn't do it, but he put forth that demarcum out, that statement out there for the people of Israel to do, right? Didn't happen. All right. And we've seen that ever since Mr. Netanyahu has been in office, first of all, he's considered a war criminal. So he can't really travel freely outside of Israel and the United States and just go wherever he wants to go. I think the Hague has declared him a war criminal. Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes, sir.
he can't just go to different countries and just, sit down with their leaders, so to speak, right? Because he could be arrested at any point in time. And when you look at the whole Israel-Hamas war, all right, I'm not getting off subject here on the 2024 election, but when you look at that whole war and how it's been coordinated, I have no doubt in my mind that the whole coordination effort to continue the war, this could have been over with last year, but there was no attempt to try to end the war because of the affiliation with Netanyahu and Trump. When he came over here and spoke, where did he go after he spoke, after he left Congress? He went to Mar-a-Lago. So I think that whole thing has been coordinated to just do whatever he wants to do for as long as he wants to do it. And remember, Trump has said that basically Palestine should be waterfront property. You know, that's been his contingency about Palestine. He has no interest in really helping the people of Palestine. He's thinking, again, with his pockets. That's what he thinks Palestine should be. All right, so let's get back to my point about the election in general. I see those alliances taking place, right? Just picking the brains off of those particular people as to how they did it. How did they manage to keep doing what they were doing? Now, let's use some common sense here. All right. So if you tried to cheat to stay in power in 2020, what in your right mind would make you think in 2024 he wasn't going to try to cheat again? Now, he's made these ridiculous statements talking about how the the Biden administration somehow had January 6th invaders, breach the Capitol and fight the police officers and so on and so forth. Well, it was your administration then. So how does Biden get tied into somehow creating this nefarious plot to do what he did, as you claim? Makes no sense. But if you tried to cheat the first time, and we all know that he did, we all know he called here in the state of Georgia to try to get enough votes to overturn and win Georgia. He was trying to do the same thing in those other battleground states that we mentioned. He tried to do the same thing to overturn the vote there. Now, what do I think he did between then and now? I think remember, they tried to breach voting machines. That was one of the things they tried to do. I don't know if they got enough information on how to do that from the last time. Again, I'm just surmising my own opinion here. I don't know if they got enough information, but I do know Elon Musk has been very sneaky in his comments, right? Meanwhile, Trump has said nobody knows more about these computers than Elon Musk. So he quietly gives some fodder to this because that's what he does. All he does is gaslight stuff, right? And Elon Musk said he knew the results of the election before they were over with. How do you know that? Why is he saying on social media that the Republicans wouldn't be in control of Congress if it wasn't for him? What do you mean by that? Why did you dump hundreds of millions of dollars into the campaign? What exactly did you do? So there's a whole lot of smoke as to, I don't know how you did it. I don't know what the ins and outs were, but I'm very, very skeptical that this election was fairly done. And I know why you do these things. You have to think a step ahead. So he claims it in 2020, and we all think it's crazy. We don't believe that anything happened to where he just somehow he was cheating in his loss. You get his sycophants that believe that, but we sit there and we say you have no evidence of anything. So that when you turn around and do it in 2024, as I'm thinking, right, now you look crazy to say the same thing. Now you look like you got sour grapes. That's how he functions. That's how he works, right? It's diabolical thinking, So I just think that those are some of the things that he came up with between then and now to make sure he got in power. And why would he do that? Think about it. Look at what they're doing right now, right? Everything from you're choking out the country economic wise, right? The tariffs, the deportations that you're doing. You're saying these are all criminals. You're still lying on 60 Minutes, talking about all of these bad people that have been released from prison and sent to the United States. Meanwhile, domestic terrorism, people that are born right here, are your biggest threat. It's not someone that just got over here on a raft, coming from Cuba or coming from the Caribbean or anywhere else you want to point to. Those are not the people that are responsible for the most crime in this country. It's domestic terrorism. It's domestic people who are born right here in the United States that are doing the most crime. It's not these people. But again, all you got to do is stir up the boogeyman, and start pointing fingers outside of anyone else besides, an American as to who's the reason why we have this trouble. If these bad people weren't here, America would be a perfect place. Be a perfect place to live. Wouldn't be no crime. Wouldn't be no starving people. Everybody would have good paying jobs. Everybody would be able to take care of their families. This is utopia when we all know that it isn't. So we keep perpetuating the lie. And then you also educationally keep people as ignorant as possible by not wanting to teach the true history of the United States, especially as it pertains to Black history, right? You don't want to teach them that. You want to hold people down economically. This is all out of authoritarian playbook. It's all there. Everything is there. You got your own Gestapo now with ICE doing what they're doing. You got funds for this to fund ICE, but you don't have fund for SNAP benefits. You don't have money for people that are starving on the streets. All of this stuff is, I think, if you get enough people like I think they did to pull off this diabolical fantasy that somehow that white men are being replaced, this whole ridiculous white replacement theory, and you get enough people riled up to believe that the reason why they're not prospering as much as they would be if it weren't for these people, these others, these that shouldn't be here or shouldn't belong. Meanwhile, the United States was founded, taking land from people who are already occupants here and then built for free. That's the real truth. And we can go deeper into that on another topic, another day. But these are some of the things that I think that has contributed to what he's doing. There's no way, all this stuff about trying to put him on a coin, about putting him on Mount Rushmore, all of this stuff that we're talking about here that's so crazy, letting ICE do what they're doing. I don't believe any of this stuff just happened by coincidence. We talked about Project 2025 here. We absolutely did. And we tried to warn people about what was in it. And those that didn't listen thought it was just another boogeyman scare tactic, right? We talked about all of that. Those that didn't listen, you're finding out now. But I do believe that this stuff was planned years in advance because all this stuff is too much. There's no way I'm going to sit here and believe that he won every battleground state, all 7 of those battleground states, and increased his numbers. And somehow or another, yes, I do believe that people can be so racist in their thinking and discriminatory or sexist or xenophobic or anything else to not vote for someone that is not like them and for someone like Kamala Harris, right? I certainly believe that can be part of people's thinking when they go into the voting booth. But there's no way, if you had any type of knowledge, if you had any real deep thought, deep research and understanding what was on the table in this last election, to think you would vote for this stuff. So as we see things crumbling and breaking down, we don't even get a jobs report. We don't even get a jobs report. You know why? Because he don't want to tell you how bad the economy is doing. He don't want to tell you how the job losses are affecting everything. He certainly don't want you to know anything about the Epstein files because a lot of this stuff is a distraction from that. He don't want you to talk about it. So he keeps doing all this other nonsense to keep you distracted from even talking about it anymore. There's no way I think listen, we know that there's racism in this country. We know people have the wrong idea, the wrong agenda. We know that. But do 50+% of the American people really side with that? Especially when you got so many blended families now and, your coworkers who you work with, what football team or sports team you root for. Is it really as deep as that, where it's over 50% of the country that actually believes in this nonsense that he's doing? Because you're feeling the effects of it. The tariffs, everything. You're feeling it. You want to bail out farmers. You got a government shutdown going on. And then he's pointing the fingers trying to blame one party when it was your party that voted against SNAP benefits in the first place. You voted to defund it. So I just, all of these things together, I just think they knew what the repercussions would be if all of this stuff was found out that that's what they wanted to do. So I just think that they did something nefarious behind the scenes. I can't prove it. We're not going to find out about it while this administration is in place. But I think down the road, we're going to find out something was done. Something was done that the American people as a whole, as a majority, did not agree with. And so he just made it to be where he was going to be in power no matter what.
Bobby, I don't see where you told a lie anywhere. Straight up, brother. Look, here's the thing. Criminals gonna do crime.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Birds of a feather. Know me by my friends. All of these, sayings that we have, we can just repeat like 10 of them that applies to everything you just said, maybe even more. And these sayings have been proven. They've been tried and proven over generations that birds of a feather flock together, to know someone by their friends, that criminals going to commit crimes. I jotted down. It was just so much obvious and so much truth that you were telling. But here is where I believe the evidence lie. All of the evidence is right there in about a 45-year-old document that grew over time called Project 2025. They laid it out in there, and they are going step by step by step. I believe I heard Rodney was breaking some stuff down on the Roundup, the other podcast that we do here.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that when he was breaking down where we are in Project 2025, this was about maybe 2 episodes ago on that platform. If I remember correctly, I think he said we're at like 54% done.
Sounds about
And
right.
we are like only like 7 months in.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that's the blueprint, brother. That is the
Yep.
blueprint. And I don't know if lawyers, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if if you can use people manuscripts and all this kind of stuff to put them in prison. Well, that's what that is. But it's right in there. Bobby, I did write down a couple of things here. I believe with Trump, I definitely believe that this guy he's definitely have a criminal mind, obviously. So his criminal mind makes him look a little crazy because most criminals, they look kind of crazy to us. Criminals are probably not the brightest people, but however, they do know crime. They know crime. They know how to commit crimes. And they usually know how to commit crimes in broad daylight. And that is exactly what this guy is doing. And so I think he's crazy, but he's crazy like a fox, if you will.
Yeah.
And so he do all this crazy dance stuff to make people I think he intentionally looks just odd in order to get to his agenda. But we also got to remember we're talking about a man who, if we get a serious president in the White House, someone who's actually serious. I don't care what the party is, but someone
Mm-hmm.
who's actually serious. Donald Trump knows he's going to prison. Much of his family is going to prison. Just about all of his minions are going to prison. He know that all of these grifters, to include himself, are going to prison. So this man is doing everything he can to stay in power. It ain't no different from all those other dictators who hide under what's supposed to be a fair and democratic elections in these other countries that we know are not the case. Like you said, they are criminals. They know that if they get someone serious in there to replace them, even in their countries, they're going to get locked up, either in their own country or somebody else's country.
Right.
And when we look at this guy's just trying to cause all kind of mass confusion. I mean, this guy is blowing up fishermen in Venezuela. They're doing things that the Coast Guard, who I believe he knows that the Coast Guard would say, wait a minute, that's not what we do. That's not how we do this. And also the Coast Guard falls under, here's what people don't know. The Coast Guard falls under the Department of Transportation when we're not in war. So in reality, you see, with the military, the buck stops with Donald Trump. So if he get the Navy to do what the Coast Guard usually does, then it came from the commander in chief.
Yeah.
But if I'm the Secretary of Transportation and you trying to get me to do something, tell the Coast Guard that, no, sir, no, I'm not going to be able to do that, because what that Department of Transportation secretary knows is that even if you're out of the seat, if we get a serious commander in chief, a serious president in the White House,
that's right,
they're going to dig you. If you're dead, they're going to dig you up and put you on trial. And people have asked me, why is he doing stuff that the Coast Guard usually do? And when I tell them that the Coast Guard falls upon the Department of Transportation unless we're at war, and I believe that's another reason that he want a full out war. But of course, Congress would have to declare war, because he can use then the Coast Guard and almost everybody like he wants to use them. So anything. Even looking at SNAP, I wrote that down when you were talking. So you know how the few federal judges that said you're going to have to pay these people, because that money was already earmarked. It was already an emergency fund.
That's right.
Exactly. And you're going to pay them half? Like where's the other money? You know what I'm saying? And people are not questioning. The media is full. He got the media all in. And Bobby, the other reason that I'm not, this guy don't even do national security briefs, man. He don't even care about that stuff. He don't care about, the daily national security briefs. I also want to say that, Bobby, it has been, and let you get back in here because this is your hot topic, but it reminds me, it makes me think about, like I talk about with Project 2025. I often say that after the Civil War, the Union stopped fighting. The Confederates never stopped fighting, bro. They saw that as you
Yeah.
won the battle, but we're going to win the war. I
Yeah.
think the same thing happened with our black African American civil rights leaders in the 1950s as they started getting the things they wanted in the 1960s passed. Then I think we as a collective stopped fighting so hard. But when that 1964 Civil Rights Bill passed, those Dixiecrats who are now Republicans, those people never stopped fighting. So, Bobby, I think we're talking about 60 plus years of them preparing. Yes, the Project 2025 maybe came around the late 1970s, early 1980s, but when that civil rights bill passed, they never stopped fighting. We thought maybe or felt that we have overcome and all of that and kumbaya. And so I'm not sure. I agree with just about everything you said, but I'm not sure that the 50 something % of Americans actually voted what I keep hearing people say, voted against their interest. No, I think they voted their interest. And you know what their interest is? Their interest is whiteness. Their interest is white supremacy. Their interest is that, and they actually believe that once that we just going to have to hurt a little bit, we meaning the white supremacists and all that stuff, but eventually they're going to rescue us. So I'm not, for that reason, that's one of the only reasons that I'm not willing to hang my hat on that it was totally rigged. Believe the American people. I believe that way too many white people, this made up construct of whiteness, have been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok. They have bought into a system. They have bought into a system that when that civil rights bill passed and became law, that those people have almost expertly done over 60 years to their brains and made them believe something. But otherwise, brother, I am with you 100%.
Keep in mind, that system was already in place for centuries before we got to the Civil Rights Bill. That construct had already been systemized and been used for centuries. I know more modern day as we think of it now, but they had already bought into it long before we got to the Civil Rights Bill. They definitely did.
You're absolutely right, Bob, because a lot of people don't know that there was a civil rights bill of, it was, I'm almost sure it was in the 1800s, and but it was not passed. So, Bobby, what happened was when, you see, they didn't care about this system of white supremacy and white privilege and all that other stuff. They didn't worry so much about it, or no one could convince them, or they didn't have to worry about it so much, because they figured and they thought that these blackies are never going to, get ahead. And so, but what happened in the 1960s is all of a sudden, because there's been many movements in the past during slavery, like I said, we were never these docile folks who only had one or two uprisings.
Right. Oh,
but
that had been going on.
We constant, we were constant uprising. We were constantly poisoning them, their food and all this stuff. They don't want people to know about that stuff, but we were constantly killing them, So we never were docile like Hollywood want to portray that, But the thing about it is the power dynamic had never shifted. And when it did, they got away with just burning it all down, just burning it all down. Well, what they understood is, just like they said in the 60s, we can no longer say N-word. We have to use, stuff like lazy and busing and welfare and all that kind of stuff, and get away and stop saying the N-word. So they realized that because of technology, you could not get away with doing some of the things that you used to do. Because like I said, when the world saw those dogs and those water hoses on TV, it's like, wait. So they had to shift. And so, Bobby, that's what I mean. You're right. The system has been in place for a very, very long time. But what I'm saying, if the 60s was the first time that they feel these blackies are about to take over. And when you are feeling like you're about to lose privilege and power, it's much easier to convince you. It's much easier to convince you, like they would say, which also came in the 60s, you convince a poor white man that he's better than the richest black man, then you can rob that white man's pockets blind or whatever.
Yeah.
And that is exactly, I believe, what has been happening. But you are definitely right. But the fear of losing, the fear also of retribution, what we might do to you. It was just that fear, the fear of my children having to listen to these folks and all of this stuff. So you are absolutely right. But I just believe that they are, I don't buy into these people are voting against their interests. I think they are voting for their interests, and their interest is that of white supremacy, that of white privilege. If anything, there are many black people in this country who vote, to include myself, against my own financial interests in order to vote for the good of the country, not the good of black people, just the good of the country.
The good of the country. That's right.
And what they have been selling for 60 years, it hasn't convinced us, bro. It haven't hoodwinked us, but I believe it has hoodwinked a very large amount of so-called made-up construct white people in America.
Absolutely. And I won't dismiss your synopsis of what you just said. And when I say
I
that
definitely won't
50
dismiss
plus,
yours. Yep.
When I talk about that 50 plus, I'm more or less saying those that are informed enough, right? But if you're ignorant enough, yes, you will vote against your own interests in an ignorant way, not the way you described it, where sometimes we vote against things because we're thinking about the common good. You know, we talked about this. Black people believe in democracy more than this country does. We have defended this Constitution and this country in every freaking war you can name. We have defended it because we want to believe in what the Constitution actually says. We want to believe that all men are created equal. We want to believe that the amendments that are in the Constitution apply to all of us. Those that don't look like us, those that are less fortunate than us, we want to believe that it's supposed to apply to everyone. That's what we generally believe as a whole. Now, when we get into where I get frustrated is when we get into the talk about, and we need an all black agenda. We need a party that's going to do what we want, right? Well, that sounds good, but my theory is simply that, hey, look, if we couldn't even agree that our own sister Kamala Harris was indeed black, these are the kind of things that destroy us when we're talking about policy and getting things done, right? If we can't even agree on that and understanding the history in this country of those that have been born, take Strom Thurmond, for example, right? To have children that they have sexually assaulted, raped, right? And say, who raised that child? Who raised that child? What do you think that child was being raised as, right? And we all know, we heard it as far as Kamala Harris is concerned with her mother. We know her father was a Jamaican man, and he's a professor. But all people got caught up in was, well, her mom was Indian, so she's Indian. Wait a minute. When did we start now running from our own blackness? When did we start running? Who, like I talked about before, when Malcolm X talked about it, who taught you that there was something wrong with your hair? Who taught you that your hair was bad, right? Who taught you to hate yourself, right? And it's those kind of things where it just blew me away as I know we're winding up this topic, but those kind of things that blew me away because I said to myself, I can't believe we're sitting here arguing amongst each other about this. And if we're going to talk about having a party, for example, of our own issues, if we can't even agree on stuff like this, and what I see now is when we talk about reparations, I keep bringing this up. All of you that were banging the drum about it in the last election, why aren't you banging the drum about it right now? You should. If you're serious about it, you should, because the party that's in power right now has the party to pass a bill on reparations right now. But see, if you're not going to do it now and then try to tell me later on that both parties are the same thing, hey, man, look, to me, that's the end of the discussion. If you're not looking how they're voting about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and the George Floyd bill and figuring out like why is it not being brought to the floor right now? You're not serious. You're not serious. So when we start taking these issues seriously, then we can have both parties move the way we want. Politics is a chess game. It's not about adorning yourself and just falling in love with one particular party. All I see is when it comes to the Democrats and the Republicans, there is a purification test in terms of the Democrats. We want that Democratic nominee to be pristine, no issues whatsoever. We'll nitpick who their pastor is, right? But when it comes to the other side, you've already seen they don't care. They don't care. And people would tend to bring up like all them people that voted for Jill Stein. Where's she at? Where the Green Party at? What they doing? Right? So you don't hear anything. And that's the kind of stuff that angers me when we get to the general election. When we start talking about things, it's like, whoa, hold on. I didn't hear y'all talking about some of these topics, when this administration is in office. Why aren't you talking about the same things? You should be if you're serious. If you're not serious, then I'm not listening to you. I'm not listening to you. We got it's time out for all that nonsense.
Yep.
But that's off topic. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. It's on topic as far as I'm concerned. Because Bobby, I think one of the biggest thing that Democrats do wrong is Democrats tend to only talk to people who will listen to them. And what I mean by that is like you said, you should be screaming right now about reparations and all of these other things that Democrats should be screaming about. You should be screaming the loudest about these things for the people who, when they are in the seats of power, you should be screaming the loudest when the people who want to take that away from you,
Right.
when they are in power.
Right.
Right?
That's right.
And so, because one thing it does is that shows you who your true allies are as well, especially the non-melanated folks. It'll
That's
show
right.
if black people were screaming about reparations while Donald Trump is in there. Don't you know that it makes it much easier for us to look around and say, where you at though?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Oh, where you at?
Mhm.
Because you see, you feel me, Bobby? And so,
Mhm.
but they scream the loudest when Democrats tend to only talk when people will listen to them.
Mhm.
And I think that's a huge, huge mistake. And so, but yeah, but watch, the next Democrat get in there, man, all kind of progressive issues going to be
Yep.
screamed about.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and it's just like, man, a whole Tea Party came out of when
Sure did.
Democrats were in power. Everything all of these groups come out of when Democrats are in power, because these folks, these Republicans, these conservatives, these white nationalists,
Mhm.
these people get angry and they do something about it.
Yep.
Democrats
Yep.
just get quiet. No
Yep.
one is saying anything about
Yep.
reparations. And so, but another thing I want to say to prove your point about is that they are also, in my opinion, very unserious about wanting to hold Donald Trump accountable
Yeah.
for what he's
Yeah.
doing. It's been done time and time again. When you can get those criminals on criminal offenses, like what they were doing to folks, killing people, like the mob and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
What did they always get those criminals on? Not what they were known for. They got them on their
Exactly.
taxes.
Taxes. That's
Taxes. They won't go after this guy's taxes. Bobby, they are unserious, brother.
right.
The Democrat, they are unserious. This guy have not shown 1 year, 1 month of his taxes since he's been in the White House. Not to my knowledge.
No, he's still in the
Not
audit.
to my knowledge.
He's still in the audit, Rodney. Don't forget, he's still in the
Right.
audit.
You see what I'm saying? He's going to stay in the audit until he dies. And the
Right.
Democrats going to allow him to stay in the audit. You feel what I'm saying?
Yep.
But what the Democrats say is that, well, and I know you was being, tongue in cheek, but
Yeah.
the Democrats would say, the elected seat holding Democrats would say, well, I mean, it's an audit. What can we do? It's an audit. How about get it the hell out of audit?
Yeah.
How about break some rules when you have all the seats of power and do the people's work and go after this guy's taxes, because that's where you always get those big time criminals at. And this guy is hiding his taxes. He's hiding the Epstein files. And so when you can't get them on taxes, you can get them on some perverted crap. Like, you can usually get them, but not for the crime that they're doing.
Right.
The obvious crime, what you really want them for. And so they're just unserious, Bobby. So you are not in any kind of way, bruh. I don't look at it as conspiracy theory. You are right. Many of our people know that you are right. And I believe many of them know that it's right. But when you have been hoodwinked and just bamboozled to just look the other way because you think that when you look to the right, that there's going to be something over there for you one day.
Yeah. One last thing to add about the election. It totally slipped my mind until you just said it just then. I'm curious as to how, and these are some of the people that are involved in working at these precincts, poll watchers, and et cetera. How is it that in some of the most heavily Democratic areas, Kamala vote got Harris got 0 votes. And some she got a grand total of 2. Meanwhile, Trump got thousands. That math doesn't math. There's no way in a heavily leaning Democratic area, and I would say the same thing for a Republican.
Yep.
There's no way that you would get 0 votes or 2 votes. That is impossible. There's all kind of little sketchy things like that
It's a
bring the
bunch of it.
question about.
And
Yeah.
Bobby, like I said, you are on it. You are absolutely right. And the other part of that too is that the man literally said that I don't want any more votes. You don't have to vote anymore.
Yeah. After this, you won't have to vote again. Yeah, he said
Literally,
that.
everybody knew that Elon Musk was heavily involved in the voting machines. These precinct watchers, they have to believe in it too. You feel me? In order for it to work, a lot of people have to believe in it, and a lot of people have to look away.
Right.
So, if they know that they have America where they want her, which is that people are willing to look away, even some good people are willing to look away, hoping that they can become a part of this social class that the Trumps and everybody belong to, those rich folks today, Musk and all of them. And then you've worked for 60 years in convincing them that somebody is taking something from you. They testing so much stuff. They're getting away with just blowing up boats of fishermen on boats and then say there was drugs.
Right.
And then to not confiscate the drugs and say, like the Coast Guard does, and say, hey, here's what we got. All these drugs. And if they did that, I'm sorry, I missed it. But the man is talking about invading Nigeria.
Yep.
Because they're killing Christians. This made some propaganda on Fox News about Nigerians maybe killing some Christians or whatever, without revealing that those same Nigerians are killing Muslims as well.
Right.
And then this guy come out and just say, we're just going to start bombing, that shithole, black country.
Yep.
We're going to take them out. They're looking at the way that people are reacting, or the way that people are not reacting. You don't hear some of the most powerful people in the country, Bobby, talking about, the genocide that's going on in Israel.
We've talked about it too. What's happening in Haiti, the Congo, Sudan.
Yes.
We've constantly brought that up, and it's not, and I'm so glad you brought it up about Nigeria.
And Bobby, when it started happening here, guess what? Nobody are going to talk about you either.
That's right.
But go ahead, Bobby.
No, I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought up that fact about Nigeria, because it's like, wait a minute. Again, you don't hear enough talked about it. It's like, who are we to now go invade another country on a theory that you think that's what's happening in the country? I mean, I'm just blown away. And again, the same people that made clapping all that noise around the 2024 election about the Democrats ain't doing this, Democrats ain't doing that. And when I say this, I'm not giving a free pass to the Democratic Party. There's a lot of stuff that they need to be doing that they're failing at right now, that we can critique them on. I'm just simply saying, like we talked about before, these type of issues like that is like, where you at? I've talked about Haiti for over a year now.
Yes, sir. Yes, you have.
We got money to send to Argentina, and you talking about now invading Nigeria, but you don't want to go help the people of Haiti, the poorest country in the northern hemisphere. You know what I'm saying? It's like we got all these other issues that we could be screaming about, but y'all not saying nothing. And you know what y'all I'm talking about. I'm talking about us, right?
Yep.
So it's those type of things that frustrate me and agitate me, because it's like, hey, brother, we're going to talk about it. Let's talk about it all, right? I don't mind the critique, but let's talk about it all. If we're going to keep it real, let's keep it real. And let's quit BSing around on all the other stuff as a whole, as a party. If you want to talk about this stuff, we can get into it. But a lot of times, man, there's no depth. Sometimes with some people, they just fall into this rhetoric of what you saw on YouTube or what you saw on social media. Somebody said, and they don't go in depth any further than that. So, but I'm glad you brought that up about Nigeria, because I was deeply disturbed when I saw that come across the news screen. I just said, man, you got to be kidding me. Are you seeing this? So
he's testing, you and I both Army veterans. We know what's happening. He's definitely testing the water. I hope that people just do not forget what I said about the Navy doing the Coast Guard's job right now. That is by design. That is on purpose. Americans should be screaming in the streets as to the Navy the United States Navy doing the Coast Guard, what the Coast Guard would be doing with these
Mhm.
Venezuelan boats. But if you keep people hungry, you keep people worried about how they're going to eat and where their next check going to come from. You know,
Yep.
I've talked about it on here.
Yeah.
That is the beginning of how you start to get your dictatorship that you want.
Yep.
Because when you worried about food, shelter, and clothing, when you at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and you worrying about the basic needs of life, that you have no time to worry about self-actualization, which is at the top of that pyramid, that Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Mhm.
they got you.
Mhm.
They got
Mhm.
you. And you can sit there and say all you want. But I tell you what, we saw what happened in New Jersey and other places, New York City, just
Mhm.
call in bomb threats. And so it's rigged in more ways than one.
Yeah.
But when you don't have people screaming in the streets, the so-called allies screaming in the streets about them doing these tricks like that. And to me, every single precinct that closed because of bomb threats in New Jersey and New York and probably all over the place, as far as we know, I bet you chances are they didn't give those people 2 hours extra to time to vote the night of the election. And I also just believe that would they really come back? Because a lot of these people, you know, the kind of jobs that they work, especially people that's on Snap and everything, because they want to believe that people on Snap don't work. But I'm no statistician on Snap, but I think that nearly all those people work or have to work unless
Oh,
they are
yeah.
elderly and that kind of thing.
Correct.
Because a lot of SNAP recipients are children; they can't work anyway. But of course,
That's right.
they want child labor laws thrown out the window too, brother. They want 3-year-olds out there with a newspaper route.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we get into the Civics 101 and close this out, it's just the amount of cruelty that's going on and by this administration. That's why I know it's going to crumble. I know it's going to
Yeah.
crumble. There's no way we can go 4 years of this nonsense. This country can't stand that. So something is going to happen to change things the way they currently are. And I don't know what that is, but I do know that when you start to starve people, as we've stated, when people are hungry, when their finances are bottomed out, and you take away their employment, what's left? What's left?
Exactly.
There's a violent response that usually happens. So this track that we're currently on as a country, it can't withstand. It can't withhold itself. In the strongest countries, as strong as the United States is, it can't continue like this. It just can't. The days ahead, we'll see what happens, but we haven't even been actually 365 days from the inauguration yet. And
No,
look at the amount of damage that's already occurred within the first year. So,
not even 11 months, man. And
nope.
I'm with you, Bobby. I believe that it's going to crumble. My only concern is because of what the country was initially built on.
Yeah.
My question has always been, if it crumbles, will it be able to even be rebuilt, that it'll crumble so badly? I'm going to tell you, we've always had people, okay? The so called, again, made up construct of whiteness. We've
Hmm.
always had those people in this country wanting to keep everyone else down. But however, it's a little different, I believe, right now. We have some
Yeah.
very evil people doing things.
Yep.
I feel this way. I feel like that, yes, they want the people in the street. They want the martial law. I have not done any research, so this is very anecdotal. However, my bet is that it would only take 3, 4, 5 days max to empty out every single grocery store in America if looting were to take place and you were to stop feeding people altogether, right?
Yeah.
And so, what after that? And so you're in the streets now. People are all for one for all. I just believe that this administration, that the evilness in this country right now has no problem turning the United States military, tanks, planes, and all on its people. I believe that there are people that will rob the United States Treasury and go on some Epstein Island somewhere. It happens
Believe
all
me.
the time. They
Yeah.
go on some Epstein Island somewhere with the U.S.
Yeah.
Treasury in lock and just let the other people just fend for themselves some kind of way. I do not see that being beyond the United States of America, especially on what it was built on. And people know that chattel slavery and all that stuff will never come back. And if that's what you were built on, then that's what you want to sustain and maintain you instead of just equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. You don't want it.
Yep.
You don't want it. You've proven that over the last 11 months. You do not want that. And that's what Democrats, all shades of Democrats, need to be screaming about the loudest. You do not want it. You want white supremacy and you want white nationalism up in here.
And got the nerve to say, God bless America.
Look, we're going to get through it. We're going to get through this. When I say we're going to get through this Civics 101, and hopefully we'll get through this mess of what's going to happen in the country. But yeah, I know you're going to talk about a little bit about the filibuster in our Civics 101 lesson today. You're going to talk about the filibuster and using the nuclear option in a filibuster. So, Bobby, our Civics 101, take it away, brother.
Okay. Bet. All right, we'll move through this pretty quick. So, the filibuster itself, a lot of people don't know what the filibuster is. So I'm gonna read to you what the filibuster actually is and what it does. It's under Senate Rule 22. It's a 60 vote threshold to cut off debate on a bill, which is called cloture, so it can be voted on. So in practice, it means like 60 Senate votes are needed to conduct almost any Senate business, even the simplest maneuvers such as calling up a bill or recessing for the night, subject to debates. That's what a filibuster actually is. So the longest filibuster that we've had on record, Cory Booker actually did 25 hours of 25-hour filibuster this year. Prior to that, and this goes back to something we said before, prior to that, it was a 24-hour filibuster on, guess what? Civil Rights Act. That's what was done. Even though it didn't work, it failed. The Civil Rights Act, there was a 24-hour filibuster done by Strom Thurmond against the Civil Rights Act before it was actually signed and passed. And so the current state that we're in right now with this government shutdown, there's now negotiations going on, or rhetoric going on about killing the filibuster. So you have what's called a nuclear option, okay? That is where the Senate don't need Democratic votes in this case because they have the majority, where they can basically pass with a continuing resolution to still fund the government, to still fund certain things that are needed or necessary, i.e. like SNAP and other things like the VA, the military. You can fund those things and have it basically in place for a few months down the road. So we're not sitting at an impasse like we are right now. They can exercise what's called a nuclear option, which is the Republicans, because they're the ones in control right now. They can exercise that if they want to and if they choose to, and that is what now is being urged by the clown in office. So that's something that they can do to get the government back open and continue on, but it would just basically kick the can down the road to another date, which could be the end of the year, which could be anything. But what he wants to do is he wants to basically have the Democrats just vote to reopen the government, and then I'll give you my ideas and my plans to help with healthcare, which is the main reason why the Democrats are fighting the way they're fighting, is because the healthcare premiums going up double, 2, maybe 3 times on working Americans. So that is the fight. So they're using all these tactics about, well, they don't want to help fund the military, which is a lie. The whole thing is really about healthcare benefits and how that's sitting on the table. And if they don't agree to giving more healthcare subsidies for the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, they're not going to vote to reopen the government. So they're now trying to use different tactics, such as possibly the nuclear option, to end the government shutdown. And so you got people that are out there that are government workers that are basically working for free. They're furloughed. They're not receiving a check, but yet they're working full-time hours. And so now you have issues with SNAP, as we mentioned before, SNAP benefits. We've already had a judge declare that that should be funded, that it has to be funded, because again, that money's already been appropriated to begin with. But remember, during the summer, it was the Republicans that voted to defund SNAP benefits. So now when you hear them try to say, well, the Democrats are the reason why it's not running, no, dude, no, that was all part of your big stupid bill that you passed back during the summer, where that was included in things. So you see these tricks that are being played with the rhetoric on who's responsible for the shutdown. And I bring that up, for those reasons, just to clarify to some people what the issues actually are, because some people don't know. They just think, oh, It's the Democrats' fault, dude. Y'all are in charge. You know, you need 5 votes from the Democrats to move forward, but that's the reason why 5 votes aren't being given to you, and you can't trust the person in the Oval Office talking about, well, I'll talk about fixing healthcare. You've been talking about this for 10 years. And you still don't have a plan. You still don't have any ideas. You got concepts of a plan, like you said, but you don't have no plans for healthcare. You never have and you never will. You just don't want to do it simply because it's being referred to as Obamacare. And all your jealousy and all your whining about wanting a Nobel Prize and lying about all these other countries that you supposedly negotiated out of wars, which is another lie. Some of it's just made up. Some of it is just, you got some peace agreements, but you don't understand what a ceasefire is, because I've seen some people associate the term ceasefires. No, the ceasefire is a treaty between 2 countries that they won't fight anymore. And even with Israel and Hamas, or Israel and Palestine, which I don't want to associate Palestinians with being Hamas, right? That's hijacking, the Palestinian people as people. They're not all part of Hamas. That's just not true. But even with that, you got that has been violated by Israel, even after the so-called quote unquote peace agreement that he keeps saying. It's all out of jealousy for President Obama. And I just want to bring up again, those 2 things is something that is the reason why we're in the state that we're in right now. But a filibuster, knowing what that is, and it's Senate now. This is a Senate thing. This is not a House thing. This is a Senate thing of basically just a stall tactic to prevent a vote from going forward on whatever is on the floor to resolve. So the Republicans have been good at it for years and doing it. Even a sucker like Byron Donalds, who in 2022 wanted to keep the filibuster in so they could keep doing what they're doing. Now he's saying that it should be abolished and eliminated. You got clowns like that in our government that just don't belong where they are. So I wanted to make sure we understood the difference and understood what exactly a filibuster is, and a continuing resolution, which is also just basically continuing on to not with nothing added to certain bills. You can't attach anything to it. You can't do anything else, but just continuing resolutions where you continue to move forward with voting on whatever issue it is that you're voting on, but you can't add any other stuff to it. So you want a clean CR to move forward and continue to operate the government is what they're trying to do right now. But and that can all fall under the nuclear option that they have the opportunity to use. So I want to make sure we clarify those things.
Things like the filibuster, things like the nuclear option, things like the electoral college, all of these things are in our government, are in our politics, designed to keep the very few people at the top in power. That's what people get sick of, but you can't get sick of it. You have to do something about it. And this is sometimes where I get frustrated with the Democratic Party, because when you have an opportunity to do something about it, you just don't do it. There have been opportunities. There have been opportunities to make the voting rights of Black people in this country permanent. You just don't do it. One of the other things I thought about, Bobby, when you were talking about how not wanting to make the Palestinians and Hamas one entity, like if you listen to a lot of the propaganda mainstream media, that's what it seems like they try to do. They try to make them interchangeable sometimes, it seemed to me. And I appreciate you not want to do that. But while you were saying that, I was trying to think of, because as Black people, we wouldn't want for them to associate us with, and my brain went blank, because you know what? Black people in America, we don't do terrorist groups. No. You could talk about Black Lives Matter as a terrorist group. You can go all the way back to post Civil War, to post slavery, and there were no Black terrorist groups. I actually wish there were, in a way, to defend. I'm just being honest. I mean, my God, they were slaughtering these people. And like, people always think that people were lynching and hanging Black people during slavery. No, you're not going to hang your property. So when we were property, there was no lynching. There was no hangings and lynchings and all of this stuff. But it's like, we could no longer be your property. It's like, well, hang them, lynch them, kill them. Well, they're no use to us. So, but even then, there were no Black terrorist groups. There were always Black defense groups that they'll just call terrorists. They right here calling Antifa a group when Antifa simply stand for anti-fascist. And Black Lives Matter is a movement. But anyway, again, it goes back to that hoodwinking stuff. So, but Bobby, one other thing I thought about too when you were talking, and that is about opening back up the government. So they don't want to open up this government on many reasons. And one of the biggest ones is to protect Donald Trump. Because what I would hope the Democrats would do, and I'm not sure that they would, that if for whatever reason the Democrats bend and they open up they agree to come back, open up the government, open up talks, and if they do, if the number one thing that's not on their agenda is for that U.S. Congresswoman in Arizona, I think it is, for her to get seated, so that way they can get this Epstein files.
Just
So
say that.
if you're not, I'm almost afraid for them to open up the government because the Democrats let you down so much with, sometimes with things that they need to be concentrating on.
Mm-hmm.
If they were to open up the government and that woman is not sworn in, if that Congresswoman elect is not sworn in within 48 hours, man, like Marvin Gaye, just make you want to holler, throw up both my hands, bro.
Yep. I totally agree with you. And that's the kind of stuff that Democrats need to. This is the type of criticism of the Democrats I'm talking about.
Yes.
Where you're not fighting fire with fire. You're not being tactical in what you're doing. And you've got opportunities, as you said, like the civil rights with the Voting Rights Act,
Yes.
to basically make it permanent. Same thing with abortion.
With abortion, yes.
With codifying it, right? It's the same thing. So, there are opportunities, and there's some other things too. That we could run down a lot of things that,
well,
that they
we can do we can do a 5-hour show simply on a civics 101 lesson.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think you got your point across, Bobby, with people understanding the filibuster, how it works, and we could go down a list of pros and cons and stuff like that. Sometimes it could be is good, sometimes it's not so good. And I'm not saying that because it depends on who's in power, which party is in power. I'm hoping one day that we will go away from this two-party system and a lot of things will begin to drop by the wayside. But that's a whole other civics lesson too.
Well, guess what?
Go ahead.
Not to cut you off, right?
No.
One of the things I found when I was looking at just some of the election results, I looked at a list of who all was participating in the last election, right? And let me 2024, right? I'm gonna just give it to you briefly. I meant to do this earlier. All right, so we all know about Republicans and Democrats, right? So we had Jill Stein representing the Green Party. We had several independents. But what I was amazed was seeing some of these party names I have never heard of.
Oh God!
So
yes.
Yeah, there was some Claudia De La Cruz and Karina Garcia represented the Party for Socialism and Liberation. All right, you got the American Solidarity Party. You got the Constitution Party. You have the Prohibition Party, the Liberal Party, the Socialist Party, and there was a couple others on here. The Constitution Party again, the Socialist Equality Party, the Socialist Workers Party, and the Approval Voting Party. And there was one name who was on the ballot in Utah. I had never heard this name before. The guy's name is Lucifer Everylove. Lucifer Everylove. And he got 2,653 votes for president.
And you know what, Bobby? It don't even take much to get a third party and to get on the ballot. It doesn't take. We'll probably have a Black Man's Roundtable party coming up. But but no,
I know, right?
I would be glad though, Bobby, if one day, and I don't see that day in no near future at all, but the country would really benefit from a true third party.
Yeah.
And a lot of things, a lot of silliness would fall down. A lot of those systems that's in place that irritates people, they'll just come crashing down. But, when you are being propagandized and, you're just being sucked in by a few talking heads. But I think as people continue to get away from listening to mainstream, bought, paid for, news sources, print and video, and start maybe looking at more real people and podcasts and all this stuff. And I'm not trying to promote it. It is what it is. I have about 7 different podcasts that I watch. As a matter of fact, I rarely get to watch ours, but I have about 7 of them that I watch because I kind of know what's going on this side. And so, and maybe we can really one day get a bona fide third party that would actually bring all of these, so many of these systems, they'll come crashing down. So but it has to be a true threat, a true party.
Yeah. Yeah, it has to. You have to have the money. You have to have an organization, obviously, for it to be serious. Otherwise, it's just fantasy.
And you got to have and before you have even the money and everything, you first got to cleanse people's brains, man. Just the brainwashing. If you do that, if we could just do that, man, everything would just fall into place so much quicker and so much easier.
Well, we've talked so much here about people being more voter educated about the issues, about the topics at large, so that you can have more of an understanding. And I really wish everyone would do that on both sides. Because remember, I tell people this all the time. Remember, there hasn't been any other party other than a Republican or Democrat that's going to run this country other than the Whig Party. The Whig Party before
other than
Lincoln.
the Whigs. Yep.
Yeah, that's it. So the system is already set up where there's only one or the other. That's the way the system is set up.
That's the way the system is.
To do a third, it's going to have to be of course, a magnificent, some type of huge undertaking to do.
Yep.
If people are serious about it. So,
and I think, and the reason that I want one so badly is because I think it will strengthen both the Democratic and the Republican Party.
Well, you know what?
A true bona fide third party will strengthen. It will strengthen those two parties. That's what
what I've said. You know what I've said, Rodney, and then I'll end on this. I've said what should happen, or what I'd like to see happen, is to have voters look at an issue. Do not put a D or a R beside the policy. Just give them, this is the policy. Tell me what you favor. What do you like about this policy, or what don't you like, right? And vote on one. And people will be surprised because nobody's 100% of anything. That's what gets me. People say, I'm a liberal, I'm conservative. You're not 100% of either one. You've got some conservative values if you claim you're liberal. Same thing if you're a conservative. You've got some liberal values. It's how it affects you personally. This is a chess game. It's a chess game. It's not you're 100% sold to one party. It's a chess game. And you have to see which one. Go ahead.
Honestly, Bobby, it's already been done. It's already been done because all you have to do is do the polling that you're talking about with the policy. Just call it what we've already done some over 10 years ago or 8 years ago, however long it's been, is either Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. The ACA has already been done. People hate Obamacare.
Yep.
But they love
the Affordable Care Act.
The Affordable Care Act, and those things are the same thing. So your point has already been proven. So
you're right.
Look, Bobby, great show, man. We went over a little bit longer than we usually do, but hey, that's why I say sometimes I'm almost relieved when there's not a special guest, so we can just kind of vent a little bit.
Yeah.
So but either way, we can still go 3-4 more hours. So Bobby, great show, brother. Close her out.
All right. Catch Local Lookout with Rodney and Bobby the first Thursday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Look for us on wherever you check out your podcast, and look for us. Also look for the Black Man's Roundtable, where you'll see us, you'll find us, and we'll be glad to have you tune in. So until next time, we'll see you then. Thanks.
Peace, Bobby.
Peace out.
Hey, family. If you like what you saw, visit our website at blackmansroundtable.com for more information or to check out more content. Until next time, we'll see you in them suites and them streets. Peace.